Victor Harrington, a 71-year-old billionaire, makes a chilling decision. He'll fake a terminal illness to discover the truth about his family. With fabricated medical records and a performance worthy of an Oscar, he descends into staged decline. Tremors, wheelchairs, feeding difficulties. But as his children Marcus and Sophia slowly begin to show up, Victor realizes the test is destroying them. When the truth finally explodes, he's left with one devastating question. Did he teach them to love, or did he just prove he never knew how to accept it? Welcome back, everyone, to another story that cuts deep. Before we begin, I want to say, wherever you are in the world right now, whatever weight you're carrying, I hope this story finds you at the right time. Sometimes we need to see ourselves in someone else's mistakes to understand our own truth. If you're new here, do me a favor. Hit that like button, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe so you never miss a story that makes you think. Your support means everything. Now let's dive into a tale about a father, a test, and the devastating cost of demanding proof of love. The pill bottle sat between them on the breakfast table, orange plastic loud against white marble. Victor Harrington didn't reach for it. His hand stayed flat on the table, fingers spread, steadying himself against the tremor that had started in his left wrist 3 days ago. The tremor that wasn't real. The tremor he'd practiced in front of the bathroom mirror until it looked inevitable. "Dad," his son's voice came from somewhere near the window. Dr. Chen said twice daily. I heard what he said. The bottle stayed untouched. Victor watched his own hand, the deliberate shake he'd built into the muscle memory, and waited. Across from him, his daughter Sophia scrolled through something on her tablet, her coffee going cold. She hadn't looked up in 4 minutes. He'd counted. Marcus moved closer. Victor heard the footsteps, measured and careful, the kind of careful that came from obligation, not worry. His son picked up the bottle, twisted the cap, shook out 2 pills onto a napkin. "Here." Victor let the tremor worsen. Let his hand miss the first pill, knock it toward the edge of the table. Marcus caught it, placed it back on the napkin, closer this time. Easier. "Thanks." Victor's voice came out thinner than he'd planned. That part wasn't practice. Something about watching his own children perform care like stagehands moving props. It hollowed him from the inside. He swallowed both pills dry. They stuck halfway down. He didn't reach for water. Sophia's tablet chimed. She stood, gathering her bag, her jacket, her keys. "I have the foundation meeting at 10. Thomas is driving you to the clinic, right?" 11:30, Marcus said. "Good." She kissed the air 6 inches from Victor's cheek. Her perfume arrived and departed in the same breath. "Call me if Dr. Chen says anything important." The door closed behind her. Marcus stayed another 30 seconds, checking his phone, then checking it again. "I'll have Sarah bring your lunch up. The physical therapist comes at 2. "I don't need," Dr. Chen said, "daily sessions." Marcus was already moving toward the door. "I'll be back around 6. We can go over the quarterly reports then." Victor sat alone at the table built for 12. The pills were already dissolving, spreading their placebo across his bloodstream. Vitamin B12, magnesium, nothing his physician Dr. Morrison, his real physician, the one nobody knew about, hadn't cleared first. The tremor in his hand continued. He kept it going, kept the muscle memory fresh, even with no one watching. 3 weeks ago, he'd stood in Dr. Morrison's private office, the one in the medical building he owned but never visited publicly, and asked a simple question. If I were dying, would they care? Or would they just wait for the will? Dr. Morrison had stared at him for a long time. "You want me to fake a diagnosis? I want you to tell me how someone with 6 months looks, sounds, moves. Victor, I'm 71 years old. I've built a fortune they'll inherit whether they love me or count the days. I need to know which one it is. Now he knew. He watched the empty doorway where Sophia had disappeared, counted the seconds Marcus had stayed after delivering the pills. 47. 47 seconds of proximity, most of it spent looking at a phone screen. The breakfast table stretched away from him, every seat vacant, every place setting untouched. The housekeeper would clear it in silence. She always did. He'd built this house 23 years ago, after the company went public, after the money became the kind of money that built wings instead of rooms. He'd imagined grandchildren running through these halls, family dinners that lasted hours, laughter that wasn't scheduled. He'd gotten scheduled visits and pills delivered like mail. Victor stood, letting the tremor guide him. He gripped the table edge, made it look necessary. Somewhere in the east wing, a vacuum started up. Life continuing around him, efficient and distant. His phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. PT confirmed for 2 p.m. Sarah will prep the gym. No questions about pain levels. No ask about the headaches he'd mentioned yesterday. Just confirmation that the machinery of care was running on schedule. Victor pocketed the phone and walked toward the stairs. Each step required focus now. He'd spent hours learning how to climb stairs like a man whose balance was failing. Left foot, pause. Right foot, drag slightly. Grip the railing harder than necessary. He'd watched videos, studied the mechanics of neurological decline, made it convincing. At the landing, he stopped, caught his breath in a way that looked like struggle but was really just the weight of performing weakness for people who wouldn't notice either way. The master bedroom door stood open. Inside, sun cut across the California king bed he slept in alone. His wife's side hadn't been touched in 4 years, not since Claire died and took with her the last person who'd cared whether he ate breakfast or skipped it entirely. He sat on the edge of the mattress, let the tremor fade, let his hand go still. In the drawer of his nightstand, beneath the actual medication he didn't need, sat a leather journal. He pulled it out, opened to the first page where Dr. Morrison's handwriting laid out the symptoms, the timeline, the progressive deterioration of a man with a fatal degenerative condition. Week 1. Tremors. Mild fatigue, balance issues. Week 4. Speech difficulties, muscle weakness, cognitive slips. Week 8. Mobility decline, assistance required for basic tasks. Week 12. Complete dependence. He was in week 3. The symptoms were escalating on schedule, and his children were escalating nothing but their efficiency. Victor turned to the back of the journal, where he'd been keeping his own notes. A different kind of medical record. Day 1. Told them at dinner. Sophia checked her phone twice during the diagnosis. Marcus asked about the estate lawyer before asking about treatment. Day 5. Mentioned pain level 710. No follow-up questions. Day 12. Dropped a glass at breakfast. Sophia called housekeeping. Didn't ask if I was hurt. Day 19. Asked Marcus to cancel his trip to Singapore. He went anyway. Said the merger couldn't wait. Day 21. Today. Pills delivered, 47 seconds. He clicked his pen. Started writing. Day 21. Sophia didn't drink her coffee. Too busy with foundation meeting, the one using my money to build her public profile. Marcus scheduled PT like ordering car service. Neither one asked how I slept. Neither one noticed I've lost 8 pounds. The pen stayed against paper. He wanted to write something else, something that made this feel less like documenting abandonment and more like gathering evidence. But evidence of what? That his children had learned to treat him exactly like he'd taught them, as a resource to manage, not a person to love. He closed the journal, returned it to the drawer, lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, at the crown molding that cost more than most people's houses, at the recessed lighting that illuminated nothing important. His phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Harrington, this is Grace Chen from Dr. Chen's office, confirming your appointment next week for the follow-up scan. Please arrive 15 minutes early for blood work. Dr. Chen, the neurologist he'd never met, the one whose name Dr. Morrison used on all the fake paperwork, all the fabricated test results, the appointments that existed only on his children's calendars, scheduled and confirmed and attended by a man pretending to deteriorate. Victor typed back, confirmed. Then he set the phone on Claire's nightstand and let himself remember what it felt like when someone in this house actually gave a damn. She would have noticed the weight loss on day 2, would have canceled her own meetings to sit with him during breakfast, would have held his hand through the tremor, real or not, and made him feel less alone in the performance. But Claire was gone. And their children, raised in wealth, educated in excellence, trained in ambition, had become exactly what the money made them: efficient, distant, perfectly capable of managing a dying father without ever actually touching him. The vacuum in the East Wing shut off. The house fell into the kind of silence that only existed in buildings too large for the people inside them. Victor closed his eyes and practiced the next symptom on Dr. Morrison's list: difficulty swallowing. He'd need it by next week. Would need to make it visible enough to concern them, subtle enough to seem natural. Would need to keep performing until he knew for certain whether his children were waiting for him to recover or waiting for him to die. The tremor started again in his left hand. This time he wasn't sure if he was doing it on purpose. Thomas pulled the car up to the clinic entrance at 11:30 exactly. Victor sat in the back seat, watching the building approach through tinted windows. The clinic wasn't real either, just another piece of the performance. Dr. Morrison had rented the space, hired temporary staff, created the shell of a medical practice that existed only on the days Victor needed it to. "I'll park and wait, Mr. Harrington," Thomas said. Victor nodded. Let Thomas open the door. Let him offer a hand that Victor took, gripping harder than necessary, pulling himself out of the car with the visible effort of a man whose muscles were betraying him. Inside, the reception area smelled like antiseptic and new carpet. A woman in scrubs looked up from the desk, smiled with practiced warmth. "Mr. Harrington, Dr. Chen is ready for you." She led him down a hallway lined with anatomical posters and generic landscape paintings. At the end, a door stood open. Inside, Dr. Morrison sat behind a desk wearing a white coat and a name tag that read, Dr. James Chen, Neurology. The door closed. Morrison's professional smile faded. "How's the performance going?" Victor sat in the patient chair, let his shoulders drop. "They're very good at scheduling. That's not the same as caring. That's the point." Victor's hand went to his wrist, found the pulse point where the real tremor, the stress tremor, the one he hadn't invented, had started living. "Sophia has a foundation meeting. Marcus has quarterly reports. Everything is handled. Everything is managed. I could be dying for real and the machinery wouldn't change." Morrison pulled out a file, the fake medical records they'd built together. Test results showing protein buildup in the brain. MRI images borrowed from teaching files, annotated with Victor's name. A diagnosis that looked terminal on paper and would fool anyone who wasn't looking too closely. "You know I can't keep this going indefinitely," Morrison said. "Medical fraud, even well-intentioned. 6 more weeks, that's all I need." "For what?" "You already know they don't care. I need them to prove it." Victor's voice came out harder than he'd planned. "I need them to fail completely. I need to watch them choose themselves over me every single time until there's no doubt left." Morrison set the file down. "And then what?" "Then I rewrite the will." The words sat between them, heavy and final. Morrison didn't argue. He'd known Victor for 30 years, had seen him build an empire from a single software patent and a refusal to stop working, had watched Claire die and watched Victor fold into himself, watched the distance grow between father and children until it became geography. "They're going to hate you for this," Morrison said quietly. "They already don't love me. Hate is at least a feeling." Morrison pulled out his prescription pad, wrote something that looked official, handed it across the desk. "New medication. Show this to Marcus and Sophia. Tell them the symptoms are progressing faster than expected. See if that changes anything." Victor took the paper. "Read the prescription for a drug that didn't exist, a dosage that meant nothing." "It won't. Then you'll have your proof." They ran through the rest of the appointment like rehearsal. Morrison checked vitals that were normal, recorded symptoms that were fake, updated the timeline that pushed Victor closer to complete dependence and, eventually, a death that would never come. "Same time next week," Morrison said at the door. "And Victor, if you change your mind, if you want to stop this, I won't." Victor walked back to the car, carrying the prescription like evidence. Thomas drove him home through afternoon traffic, past the city where Victor's company headquarters rose 47 floors, where his name was carved in stone above the entrance, where 3,000 employees worked for a man they'd never met. The house appeared at the end of the private drive, all glass and steel and architectural awards. Sarah met him at the door. "Your lunch is in the solarium, Mr. Harrington. The physical therapist is setting up in the gym." "Thank you, Sarah." She hesitated. For a moment, Victor thought she might ask how the appointment went, might show the concern his own children hadn't. But she just nodded and disappeared toward the kitchen. And Victor understood that even the staff had learned the emotional temperature of this house. Cold, efficient, nothing wasted on feelings. He ate lunch alone. The physical therapist, a woman named Amanda who was legitimately licensed but being paid triple to pretend Victor's condition was real, put him through exercises that tested balance and coordination. He failed them on purpose, stumbling in ways that looked neurological, catching himself just late enough to seem authentic. "Your grip strength is declining," Amanda said, writing notes that no one would read. "We should increase the frequency of sessions." "Fine." She packed up her equipment. "Same time Thursday?" "Sure." The word came out slightly slurred. He'd been practicing that too, the subtle breakdown of speech that came with neurological damage. Amanda noticed, wrote it down, said nothing about it because commenting on decline wasn't in her job description. Victor climbed the stairs to his bedroom, slower this time, making each step a visible effort. Halfway up, Marcus appeared on the landing above. "How was the appointment?" "Fine." Victor didn't elaborate, waited to see if Marcus would ask. Marcus checked his phone. "I have a conference call in 10 minutes, but we can go over the reports at 6, like I said. Unless you're too tired, 6 is fine." "Okay. Sarah's bringing your dinner up at 7. Let me know if you need anything before then." Marcus disappeared into his own wing of the house. Victor continued up the stairs, breathing harder than necessary, and wondered what would happen if he actually collapsed right here. If he fell and couldn't get up, would Marcus come running? Or would he finish the conference call first? He didn't test it. Not yet. In his bedroom, he pulled out the journal. Added today's entry. Day 21. New prescription. Faster progression. Told Marcus. He has a conference call. Told me to let him know if I need anything. Didn't ask what I need. Didn't ask what I'm afraid of. Didn't ask anything that requires him to feel something. Victor set down the pen. His hand was shaking again. The real tremor mixing with the fake one until he couldn't tell which was which anymore. He lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling and imagined what Claire would say if she could see him now. She'd probably call him cruel. She'd probably be right. But she'd also understand. She'd spent the last year of her life watching their children visit out of obligation, watching them check the time during her chemo appointments, watching them grieve her death with the same efficiency they brought to quarterly reports. I'm just finishing what you started, Victor whispered to the empty room. I'm just proving what you already knew. The ceiling didn't answer. The house stayed silent around him, every room a monument to success that felt more like a mausoleum with every passing day. At 6 o'clock. Marcus knocked and entered without waiting for a response. He carried a laptop and a leather folder, set both on the sitting area coffee table, and began pulling up spreadsheets before Victor had even made it across the room. Q3 numbers are strong, Marcus said, eyes on the screen. The AI division is up 18%. Cloud services are holding steady. We're positioned well for the shareholder meeting next month. Victor sat slowly, making the movement look painful. Marcus didn't look up. The board wants to discuss succession planning, Marcus continued. Given your situation, they think we should formalize the transition timeline. The transition? To me. As CEO. Marcus finally looked at him. Unless you had other plans? Victor let the silence stretch. Let Marcus sit in it. What does Sophia think? She's focused on the foundation. She doesn't want the company. Did you ask her? Marcus's jaw tightened. We've discussed it. When? Today? This week? Or did you assume she'd step aside because you've already decided you're next? Dad, I've been running operations for 3 years. I know the company, I know the board. This isn't about assumption, it's about qualification. And what if I'm not ready to step aside? Marcus closed the laptop. Dr. Chen gave you 6 months, maybe less. You're not going to be capable of running the company in 6 months. You're barely capable now. The words landed like a diagnosis, clinical and certain. Victor felt something crack inside him, some small hope he hadn't realized he was still carrying. Barely capable, he repeated. I didn't mean... Marcus stopped, started again. I meant the symptoms, the tremor, the balance issues. You can't lead board meetings when you can't hold a pen steady. I held a pen fine for 40 years. That was before, such a small word for such a complete dismissal. Before Victor got sick. Before he became something to manage instead of someone to respect. Show me the succession plan, Victor said quietly. Marcus opened the laptop again, pulled up a document that was clearly already drafted, already approved by lawyers, already moving forward whether Victor consented or not. The timeline was clean. Announcement next month. Transition period through year-end. Marcus as CEO by January 1st, 3 months from now. They'd already planned his professional death to coincide with his medical one. Who else has seen this? Victor asked. The board, Sophia. C, the executive team. Everyone but me? I was going to discuss it with you. That's why I'm here. You're here to present a decision that's already made. Marcus didn't deny it. He just looked at Victor with something that might have been pity or might have been impatience. The two looked similar from this angle. Do you want to fight this? Marcus asked. Do you want to spend your last 6 months fighting a battle you can't win? Victor should have felt angry, should have felt betrayed. Instead, he felt something colder and clearer. Confirmation. This was what he'd needed to see. His son, presenting his father's removal as a mercy. His son, who'd counted down the timeline before the diagnosis was even confirmed. No, Victor said, I don't want to fight. Relief flooded Marcus's face. Good. That's good. We can make this smooth. Dignified. You'll still be chairman emeritus, still have an office, still be managed. Victor stood, using the chair arm for support, letting the tremor show. Still be handled. Like everything else in this house. That's not fair, isn't it? Victor moved toward the door, each step deliberate. You've got your succession plan, your timeline, your future. I hope it keeps you company when I'm gone." He left Marcus sitting there with his spreadsheets and his certainty, left him in a room that cost 6 figures to furnish and felt empty anyway. In the hallway, Victor leaned against the wall and let himself breathe. Let himself feel the full weight of what he'd just confirmed. His son wasn't waiting for him to die. His son was already building the world that existed after. The journal entry that night was short. Day 21. Marcus has a plan. I'm not in it. I'm just the timeline. Victor took his sleeping pill, a real one this time, prescribed by Morrison for the stress that was very much not fake, and lay in the dark, listening to the house settle around him. Somewhere in the south wing, Sophia's light was still on. Somewhere in the east wing, Marcus was probably still working on his transition documents. And here, in the master bedroom, Victor was learning what it felt like to be a ghost in his own life. He closed his eyes and practiced dying. It was getting easier every day. Week 4 began with speech therapy. Dr. Morrison had warned him this would be the hardest symptom to fake: the subtle slurring, the word-finding difficulties, the frustration of a mind that worked fine trapped in a mouth that wouldn't cooperate. But Victor had always been good at difficult things. He'd built a company on solving impossible problems. Surely he could learn to break his own voice. The speech therapist arrived Monday morning. Her name was Karen, and she had kind eyes that made Victor feel worse about lying to her. "Let's start with some basic exercises," she said, setting up a recording device. "I'm going to have you repeat some phrases and we'll track your progress over the coming weeks." Progress. Such an optimistic word for managed decline. Victor repeated the phrases. Let his tongue stick slightly on certain consonants. Let his pace slow mid-sentence, as if searching for words that should have come easily. Karen made notes, adjusted her exercises, treated him with the careful patience reserved for people who were losing themselves piece by piece. Sophia joined them for the last 15 minutes of the session, standing in the doorway with her phone in hand. "How is he doing?" she asked Karen, as if Victor wasn't sitting right there. "We're seeing some progression of symptoms," Karen said, "but Mr. Harrington is working hard. With consistent therapy, we can maintain function for a good while longer." Maintain function? Sophia typed something. "What's the timeline on that?" "It varies by patient. Some people plateau for months, others decline more rapidly. But we're talking months, not years." Karen glanced at Victor. He kept his expression neutral. "Given the diagnosis, yes. Months is the realistic expectation." Sophia nodded, already moving on to her next thought. "Okay. Send your invoices to Marcus. He's handling all the medical expenses." She looked at Victor for the first time. "I'm flying to New York tomorrow for a foundation event. I'll be back Friday." "Okay," Victor said. Let the word come out softer than it should, less crisp. Sophia noticed. Something flickered across her face. Concern? Discomfort? But it passed quickly. "Call if you need anything." Then she was gone, and Victor was left with Karen's sympathetic smile and the recording device still running, capturing the voice of a man who was learning to sound like he was disappearing. After Karen left, Sarah brought lunch. Victor ate in the solarium, surrounded by glass and light and tropical plants that cost more to maintain than most people's mortgages. His hand shook as he lifted the soup spoon. Some of it spilled on the table. Sarah appeared with a cloth, wiped it up without comment. "Sarah," Victor said, testing his new voice, "how long have you worked here?" 12 years, Mr. Harrington." "Have I been a good employer?" She paused mid-wipe. "Of course. I mean as a person, not just the salary. Have I been good to work for?" Sarah set down the cloth. For a moment she just looked at him. Really looked, not the quick glance of someone performing a task. You've always been fair, generous. You remember birthdays. You ask about my daughter." She hesitated. "You're better than you think you are." The words hit him sideways. Victor felt his throat close up, the kind of emotion he couldn't fake and couldn't control. "Thank you." Sarah squeezed his shoulder once, briefly, then gathered the dishes and left him alone with his soup and his guilt. He was testing his children by pretending to die, but Sarah, who had no stake in his fortune, who would inherit nothing when he was gone, she'd just given him more genuine care in 30 seconds than his own family had managed in 3 weeks. Victor pushed the soup away. His appetite was gone. That afternoon he walked the grounds of the estate. His balance was actually getting worse. Whether from the performance or the stress, he couldn't tell anymore. He used a cane now, another prop Morrison had suggested. It dug into his palm with each step, leaving marks that would fade by morning. The estate stretched for 7 acres, most of it landscaped within an inch of its life. Hedges cut in perfect lines, flower beds arranged by color and bloom time, a pool that looked like it belonged in a resort brochure. Victor and Claire had bought this place when Marcus was 8 and Sophia was 6, back when they'd thought more space would mean more happiness. They'd been wrong. Victor made it to the far corner of the property, where a bench sat under an oak tree that predated the house by decades. He lowered himself onto it, breathing hard. From here, he could see the whole estate. The main house, the guest house, the tennis courts, the garage that held 6 cars he never drove. A monument to success. A mausoleum for connection. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Board meeting moved to Thursday. Need you there for the succession announcement. Can you manage it? Not, how are you feeling? Not, is it too much? Just logistics. Just management." Victor typed back, "I'll be there." He sat under the oak tree until the sun started to set. Until the house lights came on automatically, until the cold drove him back inside. Thomas found him on the path, offered an arm Victor took because his legs were genuinely tired now. "Long walk, Mr. Harrington. Wanted to see it all again, while I still can." Thomas's grip tightened slightly. "You've got time yet." But he didn't. Not really. Victor was running out of time to prove what he already knew, that his children had inherited his ambition but not his heart, his drive but not his love. That night, he wrote in the journal. Week 4, Day 1. Speech therapy started. Sophia asked about timeline, not treatment. Marcus needs me at board meeting Thursday. Not to contribute, just to witness my own replacement. Sarah asked if I'm good as a person. I don't know anymore. I know I'm good at this, at pretending to fail. Maybe that's the only thing I'm still good at. The pen shook in his hand. Victor set it down, closed the journal, and took his sleeping pill an hour early. Sleep came hard and left early. He woke at 4 a.m. to darkness and silence and the weight of a performance that was starting to feel less like a test and more like a confession. Thursday arrived with rain. Victor dressed in a suit that hung looser than it had a month ago. The weight loss was real now, stress burning through him faster than any disease. Morrison had noticed at the last appointment, had warned him to eat more, sleep better, consider stopping this before it destroyed him for real. But stopping meant not knowing. And not knowing meant spending whatever time he had left, wondering if his children would have cared if the diagnosis had been real. Thomas drove him to the headquarters building through traffic that crawled. Victor sat in the back seat, watching the city pass behind rain-streaked windows. This building, 47 floors of glass and steel, his name carved above the entrance, represented 40 years of work. 40 years of 18-hour days and missed recitals and business trips during birthdays. He'd told himself it was worth it, that he was building something for his family, that the sacrifice would matter. Now Marcus was taking it over, and Victor was learning that legacy was just another word for replacement. The car pulled into the executive garage. Thomas opened the door. Victor stepped out, gripping his cane, and let Thomas guide him to the private elevator that went straight to the 47th floor. The boardroom was already full when he arrived. 12 directors, Marcus, the CFO, the general counsel. They all stood when Victor entered, a gesture of respect that felt like a rehearsal for a funeral. Victor. The chairman of the board, Gerald Richmond, came forward with his hand extended. Good to see you. Victor shook it. Let his grip be weaker than it should be. Gerald. We appreciate you being here today. I know this isn't easy. Nothing about this was easy, but Victor just nodded and let Marcus guide him to his seat at the head of the table, a position he'd occupied for 30 years, now just a symbolic placeholder for a man they were already treating as past tense. Gerald called the meeting to order, ran through the quarterly numbers, strong, as Marcus had said, discussed the AI division expansion, the cloud services growth, the shareholder value that kept climbing. Everything Victor had built, functioning perfectly without him. Then Gerald cleared his throat. Which brings us to the transition planning. Marcus, if you'd like to present. Marcus stood, pulled up a presentation that looked like it had been designed by the same marketing team that created the company's public materials. Slick, professional, complete. Given my father's health situation, Marcus began, and Victor heard how easily the words came, how comfortably his son had already moved into the future tense. The board and I have developed a transition plan that ensures continuity of leadership while respecting the legacy Victor has built. The presentation outlined the timeline, the announcement to shareholders next week, the transition period, the official handover January 1st. Marcus spoke with confidence, fielding questions from the board with the ease of someone who'd already won. Victor watched from his chair at the head of the table, watched them discuss his removal as if he wasn't there, watched them nod and approve and congratulate Marcus on his preparedness. No one asked Victor what he thought. No one asked if he agreed. They'd already decided he was too sick to have an opinion, too far gone to contribute anything but his absence. Any questions? Gerald asked. Silence. Then one of the directors, Patricia Chen, who'd been on the board for 15 years, spoke up. Victor, how are you feeling about this? Finally, someone asked. Victor opened his mouth. Let the words come slow. Let them stick slightly. I think Marcus is ready. I think he'll do well. But how do you feel? Patricia pressed. How did he feel? Betrayed. Abandoned. Reduced to a medical condition instead of a person. But saying that would break the performance, would reveal the test, would end the experiment before he had the proof he needed. I feel tired, Victor said instead. I feel like it's time. Patricia nodded, satisfied. The moment passed. The board voted to approve the transition plan. Unanimous. Marcus caught his eye across the table, smiled, a genuine smile, full of relief and anticipation, and maybe even a little bit of love. Maybe Marcus thought he was doing this for Victor. Maybe he thought making it easy was the same as making it kind. The meeting ended. Directors came by to shake Victor's hand, to offer their sympathies, to thank him for his service. Gerald gripped his shoulder and said, You built something incredible. Now you can rest. Rest. Such a gentle word for being erased. Thomas drove him home through rain that had turned to downpour. Victor sat in the back seat and watched water stream down the windows and felt himself drowning in air. At home, he climbed the stairs to his bedroom, collapsed on the bed without taking off his shoes. His phone buzzed with messages. Marcus sending the transition announcement press release for review. Sophia texting from New York about some foundation crisis. The general counsel asking him to sign off on the succession documents. Victor turned the phone face down, pulled out the journal, wrote with a hand that shook from exhaustion and rage and grief. Week 4, day 4. They voted, unanimous. Marcus is CEO January 1st. I sat there and watched them erase me. Patricia asked how I felt. I lied, said I'm ready, said it's time. The truth is I'm being deleted while I'm still here. The truth is my son is taking what I built, and I'm supposed to be grateful he's doing it before I'm dead. The pen stopped. Victor stared at the words, at the truth he'd been avoiding since this whole thing started. He wasn't testing whether they'd care if he died. He was testing whether they'd care that he'd lived, and the answer, increasingly, seemed to be no. Sophia returned from New York on Friday afternoon. Victor was in the physical therapy session when she arrived, working through balance exercises he was designed to fail. Amanda had him standing on one foot, arms extended, while she timed how long he could maintain it. 12 seconds. 10. 8. He wobbled, overcorrected, fell. Amanda caught him. Let's try the other side. Dad. He turned. Sophia stood in the doorway of the gym, wearing a designer suit and an expression Victor couldn't quite read. Can we talk? She asked. Amanda looked between them. We're about done here anyway. Same time Monday, Mr. Harrington. She packed up her equipment and left. Victor stayed seated on the exercise mat, breathing harder than the workout warranted. Sophia came closer, sat on the bench across from him. Marcus told me about the board meeting, she said. Did he? He said you agreed to the transition, that you were ready. Victor waited. Are you? Sophia asked. Ready? Does it matter? Of course it matters. Does it? Victor heard his voice go sharp. You're in New York. Marcus is planning his future. The board voted without asking what I wanted. So does it actually matter if I'm ready? Or is everyone just being polite while they wait for me to get out of the way? Sophia flinched. That's not fair. What's not fair is watching my children treat my dying like a project timeline. We're trying to help. You're trying to manage. There's a difference. Victor pushed himself up from the mat, using the wall for support. You want to help? Tell me one thing about my condition. One symptom. One side effect. One thing Dr. Chen said that actually worried you enough to remember it. Sophia stared at him. Her mouth opened. Closed. Nothing came out. That's what I thought, Victor said quietly. I can't remember every medical detail. I'm not asking for every detail. I'm asking for one. One thing you cared enough about to hold on to. Silence stretched between them. Rain hit the windows. The gym equipment hummed slightly. You're not being fair, Sophia said finally. We're doing our best. We've hired therapists and nurses and checked boxes. Scheduled appointments. Made sure the machinery runs. Victor moved toward the door. But you haven't asked me if I'm scared. You haven't asked me what it feels like to lose myself piece by piece. You haven't asked anything that would require you to feel something instead of fix something. Dad, I'm tired, Sophia. I need to rest. He left her sitting in the gym, climbed the stairs to his bedroom, closed the door and locked it, the first time he'd locked it since Claire died. The journal sat on his nightstand. He opened it but couldn't write. His hand shook too hard. Not the performed tremor. The real one. The one that came from confronting his daughter with her own emptiness and watching her crumble because she knew he was right. His phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. I'm sorry. 2 words. Not an explanation. Not a defense. Just an apology that meant she understood what he was saying, even if she didn't know how to fix it. Victor stared at the message. Wanted to believe it meant something. Wanted to believe she'd wake up tomorrow and actually change. Actually care. But he'd built a company on data, not hope. and the data showed that Sophia had been back from New York for 3 hours before coming to see him. The data showed she'd led with the transition plan, not with asking how he was doing. The data showed exactly what he'd suspected. He didn't reply to the text. Instead, he called Dr. Morrison. "I need to escalate the symptoms," Victor said when Morrison answered. "I need them to see me failing faster." "Victor, you're already under enormous stress. Adding more performance? They're not scared enough. They're not worried enough. They need to see me actually losing capacity, not just shaking a little and walking slow." "What are you asking me to do?" "Tell them the disease is progressing faster than expected. Tell them I have maybe 3 months instead of 6. Tell them I need full-time care." Morrison was quiet for a long moment. "And if that doesn't change anything, then I'll know, once and for all. I'll know that nothing I do, nothing I say, nothing I suffer will ever be enough to make them see me as more than a resource." "That's a dark conclusion." "It's an honest one," Morrison sighed. "I'll send updated test results next week. Show progression in the brain scans, increased protein markers, faster cognitive decline. Thank you. Victor, when this is over, when you've proven whatever you need to prove, you're going to have to live with what you've done. To them. To yourself. I'm already living with what they've done to me." He hung up, sat on the edge of the bed and stared at his hands. The real tremor and the fake one had merged so completely he couldn't separate them anymore. Couldn't tell where the performance ended and the breakdown began. Outside, the rain continued. Inside, the house stayed quiet. Somewhere below, Sophia was probably working on foundation business. Somewhere in the East Wing, Marcus was probably reviewing the succession documents. And here, in the master bedroom, Victor was planning his accelerated decline, his faster deterioration, his more convincing collapse. He was getting better at dying. Soon, he'd be an expert. The updated diagnosis arrived via email Monday morning. Victor sat at the breakfast table, alone again, Sophia already gone to the foundation office, Marcus already at headquarters, and watched his children's phones light up with the news. Dr. Morrison had done his work well. The email from Dr. Chen detailed new test results showing rapid progression. Brain scans indicating faster than expected protein accumulation. Cognitive assessments revealing increased impairment. Timeline revised. 3 months, possibly less. Recommendation: full-time care, in-home nursing, consideration of hospice consultation. Victor's phone rang within minutes. "Marcus. Dad, did you see the email from Dr. Chen?" "Yes." "You should have told me the symptoms were getting worse." Victor let silence answer that. "I'm coming home," Marcus said. "We need to talk about care options, about what you need. I need you to do your job. Run the company." "The company can wait." "Can it?" Victor made his voice weaker, let the slur creep in. "You've got the transition announcement tomorrow. Shareholder meeting next week. The company can't wait." "That's what you said." "That was before you knew I was dying faster? Now it matters?" The bitterness leaked through. Victor didn't try to hide it. Marcus was quiet. "I'll be home in an hour." He hung up. Victor set the phone down and waited. Finished his coffee, took his fake pills, performed his fake tremor. 45 minutes later, Marcus's car pulled into the drive. Victor heard him come through the front door, heard him talking to Sarah in low tones, then footsteps on the stairs. Marcus appeared in the doorway of the solarium, breathing like he'd run from the car. "Why didn't you tell me it was getting worse?" Victor looked at him from the chair where he'd positioned himself, slumped slightly, face pale, the picture of a man losing ground. "Would it have changed anything?" "Of course it would have." "Would you have come home sooner? Spent more time here?" Asked me what I was afraid of? Victor's voice came out raw. Or would you have just hired better staff and sent more detailed schedules? Marcus stepped forward, then stopped. That's not fair. You keep saying that. Both of you. That I'm not being fair. But you know what's not fair? Watching my children handle my death like a corporate merger. Watching you plan my replacement before I'm even gone. Watching both of you treat me like a problem to be solved instead of a person to be loved. We're trying to manage me. I know, you're very good at it. Victor stood, using the chair arm for support, let himself sway slightly. The email says I need full-time care, so hire someone, add it to the schedule, make sure it's handled. Stop it, Marcus's voice cracked. Stop acting like we don't care. I'm not acting, I'm observing. We hired therapists, we scheduled appointments, we did everything except sit with me. Victor moved toward the window, slow and unsteady. When's the last time you just sat with me? No laptop, no phone, no agenda, just sat and talked like we used to? Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. I don't remember. Neither do I. Victor looked out at the grounds, at the estate he'd built for a family that had never really lived in it. Your mother, at the end, she knew. She saw what you and Sophia had become. She made me promise to fix it, to find a way to make you see what mattered. Dad, I'm keeping that promise, in my own way. He turned. Marcus was standing there with tears in his eyes, with his phone in his hand, with an expression that looked like it might be breaking or might just be calculating the next move. I'll take the afternoon off, Marcus said quietly. We can sit, talk, whatever you need. I don't need your afternoon. I need your presence. And if you don't know the difference, then we're already too far gone. Victor walked past him, out of the solarium, up the stairs to his bedroom. He heard Marcus call after him, heard footsteps start to follow, then stop. In the bedroom, Victor closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed, pulled out his phone and looked at the fabricated medical results that were currently destroying his son's composure. Part of him felt vindicated. Finally, a reaction. Finally, evidence that Marcus could still feel something. But a larger part just felt exhausted, because Marcus wasn't breaking from love. He was breaking from guilt, from the sudden realization that the timeline had shortened, that his father might actually die before Marcus was ready to process what that meant. It still wasn't care. It was just crisis management wearing the mask of emotion. Victor's phone buzzed, Sophia calling. He answered. I just saw the email, she said, her voice tight. I'm catching the next flight back. I'll be there tonight. Don't. What? Don't come back early. Don't cancel your plans. Don't rearrange your life because of an email. Dad, you're getting worse. I need you to be honest with yourself about why you're coming back. Is it because you want to be here, or because you think you should be here? Sophia was quiet. Does it matter? Yes. It's the only thing that matters. I don't understand what you want from us. I want you to care, not perform caring, not schedule caring. Actually feel something about the fact that your father is disappearing. I do feel something. Then tell me what it is. Without checking a calendar. Without asking Marcus first. Just tell me what you feel right now. The silence stretched. Victor could hear her breathing, could almost hear her thinking through the right answer. The appropriate response. I'm scared, she said finally. I'm scared of losing you. I'm scared I waited too long to fix things. I'm scared that when you're gone, I'll realize I never knew you at all. The words hit him harder than he'd expected. They sounded real. They sounded like maybe she actually did care. buried somewhere under the efficiency and the schedules and the foundation meetings. But Victor had spent 4 weeks documenting the gap between words and actions, and words without follow-through were just noise. "Then prove it," he said quietly. "Don't fly home tonight. Don't make grand gestures. Just prove it in the small moments, the daily choices, the times when caring is inconvenient." "I don't know how." "That's the problem." He hung up, set the phone aside. Lay back on the bed and felt the full weight of what he was doing to them. Morrison was right. When this was over, he'd have to live with it. Would have to look his children in the eye and explain that every symptom had been performed. Every decline had been chosen. Every moment of their guilt had been manufactured by a man who needed proof more than he needed mercy. But he wasn't done yet. The test wasn't finished. He'd pushed them to the edge of crisis. Now he needed to see if they'd actually jump, if they'd actually sacrifice their own comfort for his care. The journal entry that night was brutal. Week 5, day 1. New diagnosis. 3 months instead of 6. Marcus offered his afternoon like it was a prize. Sophia asked what I want. Neither one knows the answer. Neither one has ever known. Claire was right. They're lost. And I'm the one who let them get lost. I built an empire and forgot to build a family. Now I'm testing whether they can find their way back. But I'm starting to think we're all too far gone. He closed the journal, took his sleeping pill, lay in the dark, listening to the house breathe around him. Tomorrow, Marcus would hire a full-time nurse. Tomorrow, Sophia would fly back with flowers and guilt. Tomorrow, they'd both perform caring while missing the entire point. And Victor would watch it all, documenting their failure, proving his theory, destroying them slowly while pretending to be the one who was dying. He fell asleep thinking about Claire, about the last thing she'd said before the morphine took her voice. Make them remember how to love. He was trying. God help him. He was trying. The nurse arrived on Wednesday. Her name was Helen, mid-50s, competent hands, kind eyes that had seen too much suffering to be shocked by any of it. She came with credentials and references and a calm authority that filled the house differently than the therapists had. "I'll be here 12 hours a day," she explained to Victor during their first meeting. 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Night nurse will cover the overnight shift starting next week if needed. My job is to manage your care, monitor symptoms, and keep you as comfortable as possible. "I'm not in pain," Victor said. "Not yet. But you will be." Helen's voice was gentle but factual. "Neurological decline like yours. It comes with pain eventually. We'll stay ahead of it." She went through her routine with practiced efficiency, checked his vitals, reviewed his medications. Asked detailed questions about symptoms that Victor had to remember to fake consistently. The tremor, the balance, the speech difficulty, the growing weakness in his legs. Helen made notes, her face neutral. "You're progressing faster than typical. Dr. Chen mentioned that in his briefing. We'll need to adjust care accordingly." "What does that mean?" "It means we prepare for dependence sooner. Wheelchair within a few weeks. Help with bathing and dressing, eventually feeding assistance." The words should have felt like performance notes. Instead, they felt like prophecy. Victor was building toward complete helplessness, toward making his children responsible for every aspect of his existence, toward forcing them to touch him, clean him, witness him at his most vulnerable, toward making them prove their love through the kind of service that couldn't be delegated. "Mr. Harrington?" Helen's voice pulled him back. "Did you hear me?" "Yes, sorry. Mind wanders sometimes. That's normal. The cognitive decline will get worse. You'll have good days and bad days." She stood, gathering her equipment. "I'll set up in the guest room at the end of the hall. If you need anything during the day, just call. I'm here." She left. Victor sat alone in the solarium and thought about wheelchairs. about bathing assistants, about the indignity he was planning to perform, the vulnerability he'd have to fake, about whether his children would show up for that or find new ways to delegate. Marcus came home at 6, earlier than usual, found Victor in the sitting room, staring at nothing. "How's the nurse working out?" "She's competent." "Good, that's good." Marcus sat on the couch across from him, no laptop, no phone visible. "I wanted to talk to you about something." Victor waited. "The succession announcement goes out tomorrow. Press release, internal memo, shareholder notification." Marcus paused. "I wanted to make sure you're okay with how we're positioning it." "How are you positioning it?" "That you're stepping down for health reasons, that you're confident in the company's future, that you're proud of the team you built." "Am I? Aren't you?" Victor looked at his son. Ambitious, capable, ready to take control. "I'm proud of what I built. I'm less sure about what it built." "What does that mean?" "It means the company succeeded. The family failed. And I'm not sure which one I spent more time on." Marcus leaned forward. "Dad, we're not failing, aren't we? When's the last time we had dinner together? Not a scheduled meeting. Not a therapy session. Just dinner. We're all busy. That's the point. We're all too busy for each other, even now, even with me dying." Victor felt his voice crack. Not performance this time. Real fracture. "You know what Helen said today? That I'll need help bathing soon. Feeding myself. And all I could think was, who's going to do that? You? Sophia? Or will you just hire someone else to touch me while you send emails from the next room?" Marcus's face went pale. "That's not fair. Stop saying that. Stop hiding behind fair and unfair and just tell me the truth. When I can't feed myself, will you be the one holding the spoon? Or will you delegate that too?" "I don't know." Marcus's voice was barely audible. "I don't know how to do this." "Neither do I. But I'm learning. Every day I'm learning what it's like to need people who don't know how to be needed." Marcus stood abruptly. "I'm trying, Dad. I'm here. I came home early. I'm doing what I can." "You're doing what's comfortable. That's not the same thing." Marcus left without responding. Victor heard him go upstairs, heard a door close, heard the house settle back into its expensive silence. Helen appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay?" "Define okay?" She smiled sadly. "Fair point. Can I get you anything for dinner?" "Not hungry." "You need to eat. You've lost too much weight already." "You sound like Claire." "Your wife." "She died 4 years ago. Cancer. She spent the last 6 months of her life learning exactly what I'm learning now, that our children are very good at visiting, but not very good at staying." Helen sat in the chair Marcus had vacated. "May I speak freely?" "Please." "Your son is scared. Your daughter too, from what I hear. They don't know how to process what's happening to you, so they default to what they know. Managing, fixing, controlling. It's not that they don't care. It's that they don't know how to care in a way that feels useful." "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" "No. It's supposed to make you understand them. Understanding doesn't excuse them, but it might help you decide what to do with the time you have left." She stood, patted his shoulder once, and left him alone with her words. Victor sat in the fading light and thought about understanding versus excusing, about the difference between can't and won't, about whether his children's failure to care properly was a skill deficit or a character deficit, about whether it mattered which one it was. His phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. "Landing at 9 p.m. Will come straight there. Need to see you." He didn't reply, just watched the sun set through floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the grounds like a painting. All this beauty, all this success. All this emptiness. The journal entry that night was short. Week 5, day 3. Helen arrived. Marcus asked about the announcement. Couldn't tell me he'd feed me when I can't feed myself. Sophia landing at 9. None of it feels like enough. None of it ever feels like enough. Sophia arrived at 9:15. Victor was already in bed. Not sleeping, but pretending to, when he heard her footsteps on the stairs. Heard her pause outside his door. Heard the soft knock. Dad? You awake? He could have stayed silent. Could have let her think he was asleep, let her off the hook for tonight. But he'd made a decision after Helen's words about understanding. He was going to give them chances, real chances. Opportunities to prove that caring was more than scheduling. Come in. Sophia entered carrying flowers, expensive ones, the kind that came from a shop that never closed, and looking exhausted. She set the flowers on his dresser, then sat on the edge of his bed. I'm sorry I didn't come back sooner. You're here now. Marcus called me, told me about your conversation, about feeding and bathing, and she stopped, started again. I don't know how to do this, Dad. I don't know how to watch you disappear, so don't watch. Be present instead. I don't know the difference. Victor sat up slowly, let her see the effort it took. Watching is passive. Being present is active. Watching is seeing me decline. Being present is holding my hand through it. Sophia reached out, took his hand. Her grip was tentative, uncertain. Like this? Like this. They sat in silence. Sophia's hand was warm in his. She was actually here, actually trying. And for a moment, Victor felt something crack in his chest. Not the performance, but the reality beneath it. The loneliness. The desperate need to believe she meant it. Tell me about Mom, Sophia said quietly. At the end. What was it like? Victor closed his eyes. She was scared. Not of dying. Of leaving. She didn't want to leave me alone with you and Marcus. Why not? Because she knew what would happen. That you'd both visit out of obligation. That you'd schedule time with me like business meetings. That I'd die surrounded by staff instead of family. Sophia's hand tightened. We were busy. You were. You are. You'll keep being busy right up until the moment there's no one left to be busy for. Victor opened his eyes. Your mother's last words to me were, make them remember how to love. I didn't know how. I still don't. But I'm trying. By testing us? The word hung in the air. Victor's breath caught. What? Marcus told me. That you asked him if he'd feed you. That you're pushing us to prove we care. Sophia's voice was steady. So, that's what this is, right? A test. To see if we pass. Victor felt the performance crack. Felt the facade threaten to crumble. But he held it together. And if it is, then tell me the grading criteria. Tell me what I have to do to prove I love you. Because I'm trying, Dad. I'm really trying. But you keep moving the goalpost. The goalpost is simple. Show up. Not when it's convenient. Not when the crisis is big enough. Just show up. I'm here. Because I'm dying faster than expected. What about when the diagnosis was 6 months? Where were you then? Sophia pulled her hand back. That's not fair. Stop! Victor's voice rose. Stop saying things aren't fair. Life isn't fair. Death isn't fair. But we still have to live through it. We still have to show up for the people we love, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it forces us to feel things we'd rather avoid. I feel things, then show me. Not with flowers. Not with quick visits between foundation meetings. Show me with time. With presence. With sacrifice that actually costs you something. Sophia stood. I don't know how to do that. Then learn. before it's too late." She left. Victor heard her footsteps retreat down the hall, heard a door close, heard the house swallow another failed attempt at connection. He lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling and wondered if he was testing them or torturing them, if there was even a difference anymore. The truth was starting to crystallize. His children weren't failing because they didn't care. They were failing because he'd never taught them how to care. He'd modeled success, not love. He'd demonstrated achievement, not presence. He'd shown them how to build empires, but never how to build intimacy. And now he was punishing them for learning exactly what he'd taught. The journal stayed closed that night. Victor couldn't write it down, couldn't face the words that would make it real. He took his sleeping pill and escaped into darkness, where he didn't have to choose between being right and being loved. The succession announcement went out Thursday morning. Victor read it on his tablet, propped up in bed, while Helen checked his vitals with efficient silence. "Blood pressure's elevated," she noted. "Are you stressed about something?" "Reading my own professional obituary. Apparently that's stress-inducing." Helen glanced at the screen, read the headline. "Harrington Tech founder Victor Harrington steps down. Son Marcus to take CEO role." "How does it feel?" she asked, "like being erased in real time?" The article was professionally written, praised Victor's 40-year legacy, highlighted Marcus's qualifications, mentioned Victor's health challenges, with deep respect for his privacy. Made it all sound inevitable, natural, the passing of one generation to the next. Nowhere did it mention that Victor was still alive, still capable of thought, still watching his life's work transfer to someone else while he sat in bed being measured for his decline. "You're grinding your teeth," Helen said. "Try to relax." But relaxation was impossible, because his phone was already flooding with messages. Board members offering congratulations to Marcus, industry colleagues wishing Victor well in his retirement, friends he hadn't heard from in years suddenly expressing their concern. Everyone suddenly caring now that it was public, now that his failure was official. Marcus appeared in the doorway at 10 a.m., wearing a suit that cost more than most cars. "Have you seen the coverage?" "I've seen it." Wall Street Journal called it a seamless transition. Forbes is running a profile on me. The board is thrilled. Victor set down the tablet. "Congratulations." "Dad!" Marcus stepped into the room. "I know this is hard, but the market responded well. Stocks up 3%. Investors are confident. I'm so glad my disease is good for shareholder value." Marcus flinched. "That's not what I meant." "Isn't it? The company's doing great. The transition is seamless. Everything's working exactly as planned. Everything except the part where your father is actually dying." "I know you're dying." "Do you? Do you really?" Victor pushed himself up, let Helen steady him. "Or do you just know it logically, like a data point on a timeline? Because knowing in your head and feeling in your gut are two very different things." "I don't know what you want from me." "I want you to be scared. I want you to be devastated. I want you to feel something other than relief that the transition is going smoothly." Marcus's face hardened. "You think I'm not scared? You think this is easy for me?" "I think it's easier than you're willing to admit." The words landed like a slap. Marcus stood there, jaw tight, hands clenched, and Victor could see the war happening inside him. The son who wanted to cry versus the CEO who needed to stay controlled. The CEO won. "I have a meeting with investors at 11, Marcus said flatly. "Helen has my number if you need anything." He left. Victor sank back onto the bed, exhausted from the confrontation and from the performance, and from the growing realization that he might be breaking his children faster than he was testing them. "That was brutal," Helen said quietly. "He needed to hear it. Did he? Or did you need to say it? Victor didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because Helen was right. He was lashing out now, hurting them because he was hurt, punishing them for failures that might not even be failures, just differences in how people processed grief. I'm going to get you some breakfast, Helen said, and then we're going to talk about pain management, because whether or not your disease is real, your suffering is. And suffering untreated becomes cruelty. She left. Victor lay alone in the bed and thought about suffering, about cruelty, about the difference between testing and torment. His phone buzzed, a text from Dr. Morrison. Saw the announcement? How are you holding up? Victor typed back, I'm not sure anymore. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Morrison was trying to find the right words. Finally, you can stop this any time. Just say the word. But stopping meant admitting defeat. Meant accepting that he'd never know for certain. Meant living with doubt instead of proof. Victor turned off the phone, closed his eyes. Let the morning light wash over him through windows that cost a fortune, and let in everything except warmth. By week 6, Victor needed the wheelchair. Not because his legs had failed, though he'd practiced stumbling enough that the transition looked natural, but because Dr. E. Morrison's timeline demanded it. Neurological decline, progressive weakness, inevitable mobility loss. Helen brought it into the bedroom on Monday morning, all chrome and padding and clinical efficiency. Let's get you transferred, she said. Victor stared at it. This was the next level of performance, the next descent into helplessness. Once he was in that chair, he'd need assistance for everything. Bathroom, shower, movement from room to room. He'd be completely dependent, completely able to test whether his children would show up for the ugly parts. Mr. Harrington, Helen's voice was patient. We need to preserve your energy. The chair helps. He let her guide him into it. Felt the seat take his weight. Felt the armrests cage him in. Felt the performance become more real than the reality it was supposed to be testing. How does it feel? Helen asked. Like surrender. It's not surrender. It's adaptation. But it felt like surrender. Felt like admitting defeat to a disease that didn't exist. Felt like method acting taken too far, where the role consumed the actor. They did a test run through the house, Helen pushing, Victor gripping the armrests, through the hallway, down the elevator he'd had installed years ago for Claire, into the solarium where light flooded everything. We'll set up a routine, Helen said. Breakfast here, therapy in the gym, lunch in the dining room if you're feeling up to it. Give you variety. Variety. Such a kind word for being wheeled from room to room like furniture. Marcus found them there an hour later. He stopped in the doorway when he saw the wheelchair. Something crossed his face. Shock? Grief? But it passed quickly. When did this start? This morning, Helen answered when Victor didn't. His leg strength declined over the weekend. The chair's safer. Marcus came closer, crouched down to Victor's eye level. Are you okay? Do I look okay? Dad, I'm in a wheelchair, Marcus. I'm 48 years old in the real timeline, and 71 in the one you know, and I'm in a wheelchair because my brain is destroying itself. So no, I'm not okay. Marcus's jaw worked. What do you need? I need to not be in a wheelchair. What can I actually give you? The question hit different than Victor expected. Not defensive, genuinely asking, actually wanting to know how to help within the constraints of a reality neither of them could change. Time, Victor said quietly. I need time that's not scheduled, that's not efficient. That's just you sitting with me without checking your phone every 5 minutes. Marcus pulled over a chair, sat, put his phone face down on the side table. Okay, he said. I'm here. They sat in silence. Light moved across the floor. Helen disappeared to give them privacy, and for the first time in 6 weeks, Marcus didn't fill the quiet with business talk or medical logistics or carefully managed emotion. He just sat. After 10 minutes, Victor spoke. "Tell me about the merger, the one you went to Singapore for." Marcus blinked. "You want to hear about business?" "I want to hear about your life. Business is your life." "So yes." Marcus talked. About the merger, about the negotiations, about the 16-hour days and the cultural differences and the moment when the deal almost fell apart over a translation error. He talked like he used to talk, back before success made him efficient, back when he was excited about work instead of just competent at it. Victor listened. Really listened. Not as a CEO being briefed, as a father learning about his son. When Marcus finished, he looked surprised. "I didn't mean to talk for 30 minutes. That's the most you've said to me in 6 weeks that wasn't about my medical care." Marcus looked down. "I didn't realize. That's the problem. Neither of you realize. You're so busy managing the crisis that you forget I'm still a person who wants to know about your lives." "I thought you wouldn't care. About work stuff. With everything you're dealing with. My brain is dying. My body is failing. But I still want to know if my son closed a merger. I still want to hear about your day. I still want to be your father. Not just your patient." Marcus's eyes went wet. "I don't know how to do both." "Practice. Starting now. Starting with just sitting here and telling me things that matter to you." So Marcus talked. About the company. About his frustrations with the board. About his fear that he'd never be as good as Victor. About his relationship with someone named Sarah from marketing. "It's new. I wasn't going to mention it." With everything happening. Didn't seem important? "Everything about your life is important," Victor said. "Even now. Especially now." They sat until lunch. No interruptions. No phones. Just father and son. One in a wheelchair he didn't need. One in a chair he'd pulled close enough to matter. When Helen came to take Victor to the dining room, Marcus stood. "Can I come to dinner tonight?" "Just us. No work talk, just..." "Dinner. I'd like that." Marcus left. Victor sat in the wheelchair and felt something shift. Not forgiveness. Not proof. But possibility. The smallest opening that maybe, just maybe, his son was starting to understand. The journal entry that night acknowledged it. Week 6, Day 1, wheelchair. Marcus sat with me for over an hour. Talked about work, about his life, about fears he's never shared. Didn't check his phone once. Asked to come to dinner. I said yes. This doesn't erase 6 weeks of failure, but it's something. It's a start. Dinner became a routine. Not every night. Marcus still had late meetings. Victor still had bad days when eating was too much effort to fake. But 3, sometimes 4 times a week, they sat together at the dining room table that had been empty for so long. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in comfortable silence. Sometimes Marcus brought work problems and Victor offered advice that had nothing to do with medical decline and everything to do with decades of experience. "The board wants me to cut R&D budget by 15%, Marcus said one Thursday evening. "They think we're overinvested." "What do you think?" "I think they're wrong. Innovation is what keeps us ahead." "Then tell them that." "They'll fight me." "Let them. You're not CEO to make everyone comfortable. You're CEO to make the right calls, even when they're hard." Marcus nodded, made a note on his phone, then put it away. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you regret it? The way you built the company? The hours you put in? The time you didn't spend with us?" Victor set down his fork. Let himself really consider the question. "I regret not finding balance. I don't regret the work itself, but I regret teaching you that work was more important than presence. I regret showing you how to succeed, but not how to connect." You think that's why Sophia and I are the way we are? I think you learned from watching me, and I wasn't always watching you back. Marcus absorbed that. I'm trying to be different. With my kids, if I have kids, I want to be present. Then be present now. Practice on me. So when you have children of your own, it's already muscle memory. They finished dinner. Helen came to help Victor to bed. Marcus lingered. Same time Saturday? He asked. I'll be here. Good. I'll bring takeout. That Thai place you like. After Marcus left, Helen got Victor ready for bed. The routine had become familiar, helping him undress, helping him into pajamas, helping him into bed like a child. Victor hated it and needed it, and couldn't tell anymore where the performance ended and the actual dependence began. He's getting better, Helen observed. Your son, he's learning. One dinner at a time. That's how it works. Small moments. They add up. But even as Marcus was showing up more, Sophia was disappearing further. She'd been back to the house twice since the wheelchair. Both times brief. Both times clearly uncomfortable with seeing her father so visibly declined. She'd hover in doorways, bring flowers, ask Helen how Victor was doing, instead of asking Victor himself. She's struggling, Helen said when Victor mentioned it. Some people can't handle witnessing deterioration. It's too much for them. So she just avoids me? She's protecting herself. It's not right. But it's human. Victor called her that night. She answered on the fourth ring. Hi, Dad. Can you come to dinner Sunday? You, me, Marcus. Silence. I have a foundation gala. Sophia, please, I need to see you. More silence. Then, okay, yes, Sunday. She hung up quickly. Victor set down the phone and wondered if she'd actually show up or if something would come up, some crisis that demanded her attention more than her dying father did. Sunday arrived. Marcus came early, helped set the table, made conversation with Helen about Victor's progress in therapy. Sophia arrived 30 minutes late, apologetic and distracted. Sorry, traffic was terrible. They sat, ate the meal Sarah had prepared, made small talk that felt forced. Sophia checked her phone twice before Victor said anything. Could you put that away? I'm expecting a call about the gala. Sophia, please. She put it away, but her attention stayed on it, pulled toward it like gravity. Marcus tried to fill the silence. How's the foundation work going? Good, great. We're launching a new scholarship program. Sophia's voice was bright, practiced. 50 students, full ride, first-generation college. That's amazing, Victor said. Yeah, it's using your money well, creating real impact. I'm proud of you. The word seemed to hit her sideways. She looked at him, really looked, for the first time since arriving. You are? Of course. You've built something meaningful. I thought you'd be disappointed that I'm not at the company with Marcus. You're doing what matters to you. That's not disappointing. That's exactly what you should be doing. Sophia's eyes went wet. Mom always said you wanted us both in the company, that you'd built it for us. I built it for the work. I wanted you in it if it made you happy. But happiness matters more than legacy. Why didn't you ever say that? I did. You were too busy trying to meet expectations you thought I had. The table went quiet. Victor could feel the years of misunderstanding stacking up between them, all the conversations they should have had and didn't, all the assumptions that became truth through repetition. I don't know how to fix this, Sophia said quietly. How to be here for you. Every time I see you, I see the wheelchair and the weakness, and I just freeze. So stop trying to be here for me, and just be here with me. Stop making it about my dying and make it about my living. I don't know what that means. It means telling me about the gala, about the students, about your life. It means stopping seeing me as a medical condition and starting to see me as your father who still cares about what you're doing." Sophia wiped her eyes. "The gala is Saturday. We're honoring 3 educators who've made exceptional impact on underserved communities. It's at the Fairmont. 800 guests. I'm terrified I'm going to forget my speech. Practice on me." "What?" "Right now. Give me your speech. Let me hear it." Sophia laughed, surprised. "Seriously?" "Seriously." So she did. Pulled out her phone, opened her notes, and delivered her speech to the dining room table. Victor and Marcus listened, clapped when she finished, offered notes. Marcus on the pacing, Victor on a metaphor that didn't quite land. "See," Victor said when they were done. "That's being present. That's showing up. Not for my disease, for my life, for yours." Sophia stayed another hour, talked about the foundation, about her fears that she was just playing at meaning while the company did real work, about her relationship with someone named David. "He's patient with me, even when I'm terrible at opening up. I think I might love him. I don't know how to tell if I'm right." "Does he make you feel safe?" Victor asked. "Yes." "Does he make you want to be better?" "Yes." "Then you're probably right." They talked until Sophia had to leave for a late meeting. But this time, when she said goodbye, she hugged Victor. Really hugged him, careful of the wheelchair, but genuine. "I'll come back Thursday," she said. "If that's okay." "More than okay." She left. Marcus helped Victor to bed. Helen did the evening routine. The journal entry was cautiously hopeful. Week 7, Day 7, family dinner. Both of them. Sophia gave her speech. Marcus talked about cutting R&D budget. I felt like a father, not a patient. They felt like children, not caregivers. This is what I wanted. This is what I was testing for. Are we finally getting there? But hope is fragile. Week 8 started with Victor collapsing in the bathroom. Not planned, not performed, real. The stress, the weight loss, the constant performance, it caught up with him Tuesday morning. He'd transferred from wheelchair to toilet without calling Helen, trying to preserve some dignity, and his legs just gave out. He hit the tile floor hard, cracked his head on the sink edge, and lay there bleeding while Helen pounded on the door. "Mr. Harrington, Victor, answer me." He couldn't. The impact had stunned him, left him gasping, struggling to orient himself. This wasn't the fake weakness. This was actual collapse, actual injury. Helen called 911, then called Marcus. By the time the paramedics arrived, Victor was conscious but confused. They loaded him onto a stretcher, asked questions he struggled to answer, took him to the hospital where real doctors would run real tests and potentially discover that his medical history was completely fabricated. The performance was about to be exposed. In the ER, Victor tried to stay calm while they stitched his head wound, tried to figure out how to explain the gap between his supposed diagnosis and his actual health. But the stress and the pain and the fear made thinking impossible. Marcus burst through the curtain. "Dad, what happened?" "Fell, in the bathroom." "Where's Helen?" Giving them medical history. Marcus held his hand. Actual comfort. Actual presence. And Victor realized with sickening clarity that if they discovered the truth now, he'd lose this. He'd lose the progress they'd made. He'd lose his son's emerging care in exchange for his son's rage at being deceived. A doctor appeared. Young, efficient, scanning a tablet. "Mr. Harrington, I'm Dr. Patel. You had a fall?" "Yes." "And you're being treated for progressive neurological disease?" "Yes." Dr. Patel frowned at the tablet. "I'm not seeing any medical records in our system. Who's your neurologist?" "Dr. James Chen." Victor's voice was steady despite his panic. "I'll need to contact his office. Get your recent scans and test results." Dr. Patel looked up. "In the meantime, we're running a CT to rule out serious head injury, and I'd like to do some blood work." The blood work would be normal. The CT would be normal. Everything would be normal because Victor wasn't actually sick. "Is that necessary?" Marcus asked. "We have all his records from Dr. Chen." "Standard protocol with head injury, especially in patients with neurological conditions. We need to rule out complications." They took Victor for the CT. He lay in the machine and thought about exposure, about the truth coming out here. In an ER without control or context or any ability to explain why he'd done it. About losing everything he'd gained by testing whether they'd care. The CT came back clean. Minor concussion. The head wound would heal, but Dr. Patel wanted to keep him for observation, and that meant more questions, more tests, more opportunities for the fabrication to unravel. Victor called Dr. Morrison from the hospital bed. "I'm at County General. I fell. They're asking for records." Morrison swore quietly. "I'll handle it. Give me 20 minutes. True to his word, Morrison called the hospital within the hour. Spoke to Dr. Patel. Confirmed the diagnosis. Sent over fabricated records that matched the fabricated timeline. The system accepted it because hospitals trusted other doctors, trusted official paperwork, trusted the facade that Morrison and Victor had built so carefully. Dr. Patel came back. "I spoke with Dr. Chen. He confirmed your diagnosis and treatment plan. I'm sorry for the delay." "It's fine. We're going to keep you overnight for observation. Given your condition, the fall could indicate faster progression. Dr. Chen recommended we monitor you closely." They admitted him, put him in a room. Marcus stayed, sitting in the chair beside the bed, watching Victor like he was afraid he'd disappear if he looked away. "You scared me," Marcus said quietly. "I scared myself. Helen said you were trying to transfer alone. Why didn't you call her? Pride, stupidity. Take your pick. You can't do that anymore. You need help." "I know." Marcus leaned forward. "Dad, I need you to hear this. I need you to be safe, which means asking for help when you need it, which means letting go of pride. Can you do that?" Victor looked at his son, at the genuine fear in his eyes, at the care that had nothing to do with obligation and everything to do with love, and felt the full weight of his deception. "I'll try," he said. "Promise me." "I promise." Marcus relaxed slightly, checked his phone. "Sophia's on her way. She was in a meeting, but she dropped everything when I called." "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did. She'd kill me if I didn't tell her." Sophia arrived an hour later, still in her foundation blazer, breathing hard like she'd run from the car. She took one look at Victor in the hospital bed, the bandage on his head, the IV in his arm, and burst into tears. "I'm sorry," she said through sobs. "I'm so sorry I haven't been there. I'm so sorry I've been avoiding you. I'm so sorry." "Sophia, let me finish." She came to the bedside, took his hand. "I was scared. I am scared. Watching you decline. Watching you need help, it terrifies me, because it means you're really leaving, and I don't know how to exist in a world without you in it. So exist in the world I'm still in. Right now. Today. I will. I promise. No more avoiding. No more scheduling. I'll just show up, like Marcus has been." She stayed through visiting hours. Marcus went to get food. Sophia sat with Victor in the quiet hospital room and told him about David, about the foundation, about her fears and her hopes and all the things she'd been holding back because she thought she had to be strong. "You don't have to be strong for me," Victor said. "You just have to be here." "I'm learning that." They discharged Victor the next morning with instructions for increased supervision and a recommendation that he transition to full-time nursing care day and night. Helen met them at home with an additional night nurse, a man named Thomas who'd worked in hospice and knew how to make dying comfortable. Victor was now under 24-hour care, watched constantly, helped with everything. The performance had escalated to the point where privacy was gone, where every moment was witnessed, where he couldn't break character even if he wanted to. But something had shifted. Marcus came by every evening. Sophia came 3 times a week. They sat with him, talked to him, included him in their lives. The test was working. They were caring. Finally, genuinely caring. And Victor was trapped in a lie that had become too big to escape. The journal entry from the hospital was devastating. Week 8, day 2. Real fall. Real injury. Thought the performance would be exposed. Morrison covered. But now I'm under constant care. Can't stop even if I wanted to. And the terrible thing, they're showing up. They're here. They're caring. Which means the test is succeeding right when I need it to end. I'm getting what I wanted. And it's destroying me. Week 10 brought the feeding tube discussion. Victor had lost 23 pounds. The stress diet combined with the performance of eating difficulty had taken its toll. He looked skeletal. Even Morrison was concerned. "You need to eat," Morrison said during a secret phone call while both nurses were occupied. "Actually eat. This isn't sustainable." "I'm trying." "Try harder. Because if you keep losing weight, they're going to insist on a feeding tube, and I can't fake that. You'd have to actually get the procedure. I'll eat more. But eating was hard when you were pretending to have difficulty swallowing, when you were performing progressive muscle weakness, when you'd taught your body to reject food as part of the performance and couldn't easily reverse it." Helen noticed first. "Mr. Harrington, you're barely touching your meals." "Not hungry. Your body needs nutrition. Dr. Chen mentioned a feeding tube if your intake doesn't improve." "No feeding tube. It's not up to you if your health declines further." That night, Marcus and Sophia came for their regular dinner visit. But instead of eating with Victor, they sat across from him and watched him struggle through soup, watched his hand shake, watched him cough when he swallowed wrong, watched the performance that had become too convincing. "Dad," Marcus said gently, "maybe we should consider the feeding tube." "No. It would help. You wouldn't have to struggle with meals. You'd get the nutrition you need." I said no. Sophia leaned forward. "We're just trying to keep you comfortable. You're trying to manage me. Again. Still. Always." Victor set down his spoon. "I'm allowed to eat like a human. I'm allowed to struggle. I'm allowed to choose discomfort over convenience. That's not what we meant." "Yes, it is. You want the clean solution. The medical intervention. The thing that fixes the problem so you don't have to watch me fail." Victor's voice rose. "But watching me fail is part of loving me. Sitting through the difficult meals. Watching me cough. Seeing me weak. That's what presence means." Marcus looked stricken. "We're here. We're sitting with you. You're here in body, but your minds are already planning the intervention, already solving the problem, already managing instead of witnessing." "What do you want from us?" Sophia's voice broke. "We're trying. We're really trying. I know you are, and it's not enough. It's never enough, because you're trying to make this easier on yourselves. And dying isn't supposed to be easy." Victor pushed his bowl away. "It's supposed to be hard, uncomfortable, raw, and you're supposed to sit through it anyway. That's not fair." "Stop saying that," Victor's shout echoed through the dining room. "Stop hiding behind fair and unfair and just be human. Cry, rage, fall apart. Do something that proves you feel this." Sophia was already crying. Marcus looked like he wanted to, but they both just sat there, frozen in their discomfort, unable to break out of the roles they'd been playing their entire lives. Controlled, composed, correct. "I can't do this anymore," Sophia whispered. "Do what?" "Watch you die. Watch you suffer. Watch you hate us for trying to help." She stood, grabbed her purse. "I'm sorry, I can't." She left. Marcus looked between the door and Victor, torn. "Go after her," Victor said quietly. "I should stay. Go. She needs you more than I do right now." Marcus left. Victor sat alone at the dining room table, surrounded by half-eaten food and complete emotional wreckage. Helen appeared in the doorway. "That was cruel." "I know. They're trying their best. Their best isn't good enough. Maybe the problem isn't their best. Maybe it's your expectations." Helen came closer. "You want them to grieve in a specific way, to show love in a specific way. But people are different. They process differently. They care differently. They avoid differently. Yes, that too. But pushing them away by demanding they break down in front of you, that's not teaching them to love. That's traumatizing them." Helen sat in Marcus's abandoned chair. "I've worked with dying patients for 20 years. And you want to know the common thread? The ones who die angry and alone are the ones who couldn't accept the love that was offered because it didn't match the love they demanded. So I should accept inadequate care? You should accept human care. Imperfect care. Care that's trying even when it's failing." Helen left him with that. Victor sat in the silence and let her words sink in. Was he testing them? Or torturing them? Was he teaching them to love? Or punishing them for not knowing how? The journal entry that night was honest in a way that hurt. Week 10, day 3. Sophia left. Can't watch me suffer. I told them they're not enough, that their caring isn't good enough. Helen says I'm traumatizing them. She's right. I'm destroying them in the name of teaching them. I'm breaking them to prove a point. What kind of father does that? What kind of man? Victor closed the journal and made a decision. It was time to end this, before he lost them completely, before the test destroyed what little family he had left. He called Morrison. "I'm stopping," Victor said. "The performance, the test, all of it. Thank God. But I need your help with how to tell them, how to explain what I've done without losing them forever." Morrison was quiet for a long moment. "Victor, I don't know if that's possible. What you've done, lying about a terminal diagnosis, making them watch you deteriorate, testing whether they'd care, that's going to feel like betrayal, like abuse. They're not going to understand. I have to try. Then be prepared for them to never forgive you." Victor hung up and stared at the ceiling and wondered if confession would bring relief or just a different kind of suffering. Either way, he couldn't keep going. The performance had succeeded too well. His children were showing up. They were caring. They were breaking themselves trying to meet expectations that existed only in his head. And he was the one destroying them. Tomorrow, he'd tell them the truth. Tomorrow, he'd face their rage and their grief and their betrayal. Tomorrow, he'd learn if love could survive honesty. But tonight, he took his sleeping pill and escaped into darkness one last time. Victor woke up to shouting, voices in the hallway, Marcus and Sophia, arguing. Can't keep watching him waste away. So what? You just leave? You just give up? I'm not giving up. I'm protecting myself. That's the same thing. Victor lay in bed, listening to his children fight over him, like he was already gone, listening to them fracture under the weight of caring for someone who kept rejecting how they cared. He'd done this. He'd pushed them to this breaking point. Time to end it. Victor got himself into the wheelchair, slowly, carefully, without calling for help. Wheeled himself to the hallway where Marcus and Sophia stood outside his room, both of them red-faced and exhausted. "Stop," Victor said. They turned, saw him. Sophia's anger crumbled into concern. "Dad, you shouldn't be up alone. I need to tell you both something, and I need you to not interrupt until I'm finished." They followed him downstairs. He wheeled himself to the living room, positioned himself where he could see both of them. took a breath that felt like stepping off a cliff. "I'm not sick," he said. Silence. "What?" Marcus's voice was barely audible. "I'm not sick. There's no neurological disease, no protein buildup, no degeneration. It's all fake. I've been performing, testing you, to see if you'd actually care." The words landed like bombs. Victor watched them detonate across his children's faces. Shock, disbelief, then slow, dawning horror. "You're lying," Sophia whispered. "I'm not. Dr. Chen doesn't exist. The test results are fabricated. My real physician, Dr. Morrison, has been helping me stage everything. The tremor, the weakness, the wheelchair, all of it." Marcus stood slowly. "You're saying you pretended to be dying. For what? 2 months? 10 weeks. 10 weeks. Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. "You put us through 10 weeks of watching you deteriorate, of grieving you, of rearranging our lives to care for you, and it was all fake." "I needed to know." "Needed to know what?" Sophia's voice was rising. "Needed to know if we'd pass your sick test, if we'd care enough, if we'd prove ourselves worthy. I needed to know if you loved me, not my money, not my legacy, me. So you tortured us." Marcus was shaking. "You made us watch you suffer, made us feel helpless, made us believe we were losing you. That's torture, Dad. That's abuse. I'm sorry." "Sorry?" Sophia laughed, sharp and broken. "You're sorry? I've spent the last 10 weeks terrified. Crying myself to sleep, canceling work, ending relationships, all because I thought my father was dying. And you're sorry? I was wrong. I know I was wrong. But you were barely seeing me before this. You were treating me like an obligation. I needed to know if you'd show up when it mattered." "So you created a crisis," Marcus said flatly. "You manufactured urgency. You manipulated us into caring." "Yes. That's not love. That's control." The word hit Victor like a physical blow, because Marcus was right. He hadn't been testing love. He'd been demanding it be performed in specific ways. He'd been controlling how they showed affection, punishing them when it didn't meet his standards. He'd become exactly what he'd accused them of being: manipulative, distant, more concerned with his own needs than theirs. "Fuss. I don't know what I was thinking," Victor said quietly. "I was lonely, grieving your mother, watching you both build lives that didn't include me. And instead of just telling you that, I created this elaborate test, this performance, this lie." Sophia's voice was cold. "You lied to us about something unforgivable. You made us believe you were dying. I wanted to see if you'd care. We were caring. We hired nurses. We rearranged schedules. We sat with you. We tried." "I know. I see that now. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." But sorry wasn't enough. Victor could see it in their faces. The betrayal was too deep, the wound too fresh. Marcus moved toward the door. "I can't be here right now." "Marcus, please." "No, you don't get to ask me for anything right now. You lied to me. You made me watch you pretend to die. You made me practice grief. You made me..." His voice broke. "You made me think I was losing my father, and now I find out you were just testing me, seeing if I'd pass. That's sick, Dad. That's genuinely sick." He left. Sophia stayed, but her expression was stone. "I loved you," she said quietly. "Through all of it. Even when I was scared, even when I was avoiding you, I still loved you. And you used that. You weaponized my love to prove some point about worthiness. Sophia, I'm done. With you. With this house. With pretending we're a family." She stood. "I hope your test gave you what you needed. Because it cost you everything else." She left too. Victor sat alone in the living room in a wheelchair he didn't need, surrounded by silence and the ruins of relationships he'd destroyed in the name of testing them. Helen appeared in the doorway. "I'm quitting, effective immediately." "I understand." "No, you don't. Because if you understood, you never would have done this." She stared at him with something like pity. "I've worked with dying patients who fought to live, who begged for more time with their families, and you wasted it. You had healthy children who were trying their best to care for you, and you spent 2 months lying to them about dying. That's not testing, that's cruelty." She left. Thomas followed. Sarah gave notice that afternoon. By evening, Victor was alone in the house, completely alone. The staff gone, the nurses gone, his children gone. He wheeled himself to his bedroom, pulled out the journal, wrote the final entry. Week 10, day 4. Told them the truth. Lost them. Marcus is right. I tortured them. I called it testing. Called it teaching. But it was just control, just manipulation, just a lonely man punishing his children for not loving him the way he demanded. Mom, I failed. I tried to make them remember how to love. Instead, I taught them how to leave. I'm sorry for everything. I'm so sorry. Victor closed the journal, set it on Claire's nightstand, stood up from the wheelchair, easily because his legs worked fine, because they'd always worked fine. He walked to the window, looked out at the grounds of the estate he'd built, the monument to his success, the mausoleum of his family. His phone rang. Dr. Morrison. I heard. Are you okay? No. Do you need me to come over? No, I need to sit with what I've done. Victor hung up, sat on the edge of the bed, stared at the empty house that held everything except what mattered. He'd wanted proof that his children loved him. Instead, he'd proven only that he didn't know how to accept the love they were offering, that he'd rather destroy their care than accept it came in a different shape than he'd expected. He'd wanted to teach them. Instead, he'd lost them. The house settled into silence. Victor lay back and stared at the ceiling and thought about Claire's last words. Make them remember how to love. He'd failed, spectacularly, cruelly, completely. And now he'd have to live with that. Now he'd have to figure out how to exist in the rubble of what he'd destroyed, if that was even possible. 3 weeks passed in silence. Victor lived alone in the house, ordered groceries, cleaned for himself, did everything he'd been pretending he couldn't do. No calls from Marcus or Sophia, no texts, no visits. He'd left messages, sent apologies, tried to explain, but they didn't respond. The silence was complete. Dr. Morrison came by once, checked on him, left, shaking his head. You need to give them time. How much time? However long it takes. You can't rush healing from this. But Victor was 71 years old. Time felt finite in a way it hadn't before this started. He'd wasted 10 weeks on a performance that destroyed his family. He didn't know how much time he had left to repair it, if repair was even possible. He spent his days walking the grounds, reading in the solarium, sleeping in a bed that felt too large, living in silence that was no longer performing grief, but actually experiencing it. On the 22nd day, his doorbell rang. Victor answered it. Marcus stood there, looking thin and exhausted. Can I come in? Victor stepped aside. Marcus entered. They walked to the living room, sat in the same chairs where Victor had confessed the truth. I'm not ready to forgive you, Marcus said. I don't know if I ever will be. I understand. But I've been thinking about what you said, about us treating you like an obligation, and you weren't completely wrong. Marcus stared at his hands. We did get too busy, too focused on our own lives, too comfortable with the distance. That doesn't excuse what I did. No, it doesn't. But it explains it. Sort of. Marcus looked up. You were lonely, grieving, missing Mom. And instead of telling us that, you created a crisis. I'm sorry. I know. I've listened to your messages, all 15 of them. Marcus's mouth twitched, almost a smile. You're very thorough in your apologies. I needed you to know, I know. And I'm here because despite everything, Despite the lies and the manipulation and the cruelty, you're still my father. And I still love you, even though I hate you right now too. Victor felt his throat close. I love you too. Don't. Not yet. I'm not ready for that. Marcus stood. I came to tell you I'm in therapy. Processing this. The therapist says it's going to take time, says I need to grieve what you put me through, says I need to set boundaries. What boundaries? No lies. Ever. About anything. If you're feeling lonely, you tell me. If you're scared, you tell me. But you never ever manipulate me into caring again. I won't, I promise. And we rebuild slowly. No grand gestures. No trying to fix it all at once. Just small moments. Coffee, maybe. Once a week. If I'm ready. I'd like that. Marcus moved toward the door. Stopped. Dad, the worst part wasn't that you lied. It was that you didn't trust us to care unless we proved it to your standards. That hurt more than anything. I know. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. He left. Victor sat alone in the living room and felt the smallest crack of light break through the darkness. Marcus was angry, hurt, boundary setting. But he'd come. He'd talked. He'd left the door open for coffee. It was more than Victor deserved, and less than he'd hoped for. But it was something. It was a start. Sophia came 6 weeks later. No warning. Just appeared at the door one Sunday morning, wearing jeans and no makeup, looking like she'd been crying for hours. I need to understand, she said without preamble. I need you to explain how you could do that to us. Victor stepped aside, let her in, made coffee they didn't drink, sat across from her in the solarium where light made honesty easier somehow. I was testing the wrong thing, Victor said. I thought I was testing whether you'd care, but really I was punishing you for not caring the way I wanted you to. That's not an explanation. That's an excuse. You're right. The explanation is harder. Victor took a breath. Your mother died knowing you and Marcus had become strangers to me. Successful, capable, but distant. And I blamed you for that instead of looking at how I'd raised you, how I'd modeled success over connection, how I'd taught you to manage instead of feel. So you lied about dying to teach us a lesson? I lied about dying because I was terrified you wouldn't care if it was real, because I needed proof that underneath all the distance and the schedules and the efficiency, you still loved me. And I needed that proof more than I needed to be kind. Sophia was crying now. We always loved you. I know that now, but I didn't then. I couldn't see it through my own loneliness. You could have just talked to us. I should have. But talking felt risky. What if I told you I was lonely and you didn't change? What if I asked for more time and you said no? The test felt safer because it gave me control. It gave you nothing. You lost us. I know, and I'd give anything to undo it. They sat in silence. Sophia wiped her eyes. Marcus says you're in therapy too. I am. Working through why I needed to control love instead of receiving it. Why I couldn't accept care that came in a different shape than I expected. Is it helping? Slowly. I'm learning that people show love in different languages, and I was demanding you speak mine without learning to understand yours. Sophia smiled sadly. Mine was the foundation work, honoring your legacy by helping others. I thought that would make you proud. It did. It does. I just couldn't see it because I was too focused on what you weren't giving me. And what was I not giving you? Time. Presence. But also, I wasn't giving you permission to love me in your own way. I was demanding you love me in mine. More silence. Sophia reached across the table, took his hand. I don't forgive you yet, she said. But I want to understand you. I want to rebuild. Eventually. I'll wait as long as it takes. Good, because it's going to take a while. She stood to leave, stopped at the door. Dad, did the test work? At the end, before you told us the truth, were we caring the way you wanted? Victor thought about it, about Marcus sitting through dinners, about Sophia's speech practice, about both of them showing up even when it was hard. Yes, he said, you were. And that's the cruelest part. It worked. You were caring, and I destroyed it anyway by confessing. Why did you confess? Because keeping the lie meant losing you slowly. Confessing meant losing you all at once. But at least with confession, there was a chance to rebuild from truth instead of performance. Sophia nodded. That was the right choice. The only choice. She left. Victor sat in the solarium and felt the second crack of light break through. Sophia wasn't ready to forgive, but she was ready to understand. And understanding was the foundation for everything else. Rebuilding took time. Coffee with Marcus became a weekly ritual. They met at a cafe halfway between the house and headquarters, talked about work, about therapy, about slowly learning to trust each other again. Sophia came by every other week. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just existed in the same space, reading or working in comfortable silence. She brought David once. He shook Victor's hand, polite and careful, clearly briefed on the history. Your daughter talks about you a lot, David said. Good things? Complicated things. Which is more honest than good things. Victor liked him immediately. Months passed. The anger softened into something more manageable. Grief that wasn't about dying, but about time wasted, about lessons learned too late, about a family fractured and slowly, carefully piecing itself back together. Victor sold the estate. Too many ghosts. Too many rooms designed for performances instead of living. He bought a smaller house closer to both his children. Simple. Manageable. Real. Marcus helped him move. Sophia decorated the living room. They worked together without discussing the symbolism, that they were building something new from the ashes of what he'd destroyed. On Victor's 72nd birthday, they both came to dinner. Not a grand celebration. Just takeout and conversation, and the three of them around a table that fit them better than the dining room at the estate ever had. Thank you for coming, Victor said. Of course, Marcus replied. Sophia smiled. Where else would we be? And in that moment, Victor understood what he'd been searching for all along. Not proof of love, not performed care, just presence, just showing up, just family being family, imperfect and trying. He'd destroyed them to find it, had lied and manipulated and tested until everything broke, but somehow, impossibly, they'd found their way back, not to what they were. They'd never be that again, but to something new, something honest, something built on truth instead of performance. That night, Victor wrote one final journal entry. They came to my birthday. Both of them. We ate Thai food and talked about normal things. Marcus told bad jokes. Sophia showed me foundation photos. I didn't have to perform. They didn't have to prove anything. We just were. Together. Imperfect. Real. I destroyed us to teach them to love, but they taught me something better. How to accept love without demanding it prove itself. How to receive care in whatever shape it comes. How to be a father instead of a tester. Claire, I hope I finally got it right. I hope this is what you meant. Not making them love me, but learning to love them as they are. He closed the journal, put it away in a drawer where it would stay, a record of his greatest failure and his hardest lesson. Then he went back to the living room where his children were arguing about what movie to watch, and he sat with them and let himself feel grateful for the imperfect, complicated, hard-won presents they were giving him. It wasn't the family he'd imagined, it wasn't the love he'd demanded, but it was real. And real, he was learning, was more than enough. 6 months later, Victor sat in Dr. Morrison's office for a real checkup. Actual vitals, actual health assessment, no performance. "You're doing well," Morrison said, reviewing the charts. "Blood pressure's down. You've gained back most of the weight. Stress levels are much improved. I'm sleeping better. That helps. How are things with Marcus and Sophia?" "Good. Different. We have boundaries now. Therapy-approved boundaries. But we're building something." Morrison smiled. "I'm glad. You deserved that outcome, even if you took the hardest possible path to get there." "Do I deserve it, after what I did?" "That's not for me to judge. But I'll say this. You recognized your mistake. You confessed. You're doing the work to repair it. That counts for something." Victor nodded. "I just hope it's enough." "It will be. Or it won't. But either way, you're living in truth now instead of performance. That's growth." After the appointment, Victor drove to the cafe where he was meeting Marcus. His son was already there, 2 coffees on the table, laptop open. "How was the checkup?" Marcus asked. "Clean bill of health, ironically." Marcus smiled. "Good. We need you around for a while yet." "Do you?" "Yeah, Dad, we do." They talked about the company, about the R&D budget fight Marcus had won, about his relationship with Sarah. "Getting serious, thinking about proposing. That's wonderful. I'd like you to meet her. Properly. Dinner maybe, at your place." "I'd love that." After coffee, Victor drove to Sophia's foundation office. She'd invited him to see the new scholarship program launch. 50 students, full rides, first-generation college. "This is incredible," Victor said, watching the students line up to receive their award letters. "It's your money doing it," Sophia replied. "It's your vision making it matter." She squeezed his hand. "I'm glad you're here to see it." "Me too." That evening, back in his small house, Victor thought about the question that had started everything. If I were dying, would they care? He'd gotten his answer, just not the way he'd expected. They'd cared, imperfectly, humanly, in their own ways, and he'd almost destroyed that care by demanding it prove itself. But he'd learned. They'd all learned. And now they had something better than proof. They had presence. They had truth. They had family. Imperfect. Complicated. Real. Victor made himself dinner, ate at the small table in his small kitchen, cleaned up afterward. Went to bed in a house that fit his life instead of trying to impress it. And he slept well, knowing that tomorrow Marcus would call, that Sophia would text, that they'd show up in small ways, daily ways, real ways, not because he'd tested them, but because they'd chosen to. And that choice, freely given, was worth more than any proof he could have demanded. Was the test justified? Did the cruelty serve a purpose? Or did it just reveal a father's own broken need for control? When care is given imperfectly, do we have the right to destroy it in the name of demanding better? Or do we learn to accept love in whatever form it arrives? Messy, insufficient, but genuine? Drop a comment below. Tell me if Victor was a villain or a victim of his own loneliness. Tell me if his children deserved the test or if they were always doing their best. And if this story made you feel something real, anger, grief, recognition, hit that like button and subscribe. Because the stories that hurt are the ones that matter most.